Good evening. Welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, February 4th, 2013. We have a quorum present with one council member absent. But we have a quorum to deal with business. Tonight we will be reading several ordinances, at least one resolution for action. And the only communication that I have is one involving a transfer of a liquor license. I understand that Louis Louis is the owners of Louis Louis have changed names from Jade Restaurant to Ram Restaurant LLC. Still doing business as Louis Louis, and so this change, they're asking us to respond by February 25th. If we have any questions, please see the council clerk. And how about reports and communications from other elected officials? Mayor Weil.
Nothing much really. We're going to have our town hall meeting next Tuesday. That'll be 6:30. I'm aware that we're under level 1 snow emergency, and there's a boil order on Columbus Road. So I really don't have much to talk about.
What time is your
6:30 at the community center.
At the community center? Okay.
From 1, come all.
Law Director?
I have no report tonight, Mr. President.
Okay. So we will move on. We have no ordinances for third reading. We'll begin with ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 0113, an ordinance amending the zoning classification between Utah Place and Townsend Place from R2 to R1. Yes.
I have a question on this ordinance. When we talked about this in, was it 2 weeks ago? When I questioned the inclusion of a couple businesses like a car wash, planner Paul Oakes sent an updated map. The one that we had looked at that night was an error. Do we need to, is that actually part of the ordinance, the map? Okay, so what we said is
the ordinance is based on the recommendation from the Planning Commission and our amendment of what we amended.
So, right, so it includes the parcels that we discussed. Okay.
So there's no change on the ordinance.
So it's correct as we originally thought.
Right.
Okay. Ordinance 213. An ordinance amending the 2013 appropriation ordinance and authorizing an interfund transfer. Member Nisley, would you?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like us to consider this under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The purpose being that we need to pay out some of the items identified in this appropriation ordinance.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules on ordinance 213. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The rules have been suspended. Member Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 213.
Second.
And this particular ordinance has 6 parts to it, and so I'll briefly review these items. We've talked about them before in committee meeting and also at the first reading. The first part would be that we're going to appropriate $3,000 to the general fund, and this will cover the increased jail costs that the city will be charged this year. The second item is $478,539 to the Community Development Block Grant Fund, and these are for various grants and projects taking place with the city this year. Third item is $36,050 to the Street Rehabilitation Fund, and this is for paving a portion of Route 50 to Blackburn Road, and this is will be done in conjunction with Ohio Department of Transportation. Next item, the fourth item, is $235,000 to the Tax Incremental Fund, and this will cover the school share and the auditor's fees for tax incremental fund revenues that come into the city. We appropriate these about twice a year, approximately $400,000 or so. And this is the part that goes to the school. The next is $250,000, and this is for transfer, and these are for the portions of the tax incremental fund revenue that will come into the city that we will use to take care of our East State Street debt fund. Sixth item is $172,085.96. That goes to the water debt fund, and this is for final payment to a contractor for Project 264. And these are the repairs and improvements made to the Joneswood Terrace area earlier this year. Last part of this appropriation ordinance is what's called Section 2, and what it does is it transfers money from that tax incremental funding fund, 593, in the amount of $250,000, and then transfers it over to account 483, which is our East State Street debt fund. So that gets it into the appropriate accounts.
Meredith, you look like you're getting ready.
No.
Council members, anybody have? Okay, we have a motion and a second for third reading, approval of this ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance is passed. Ordinance 0413, an ordinance amending Ordinance 13212, authorizing the mayor to execute a housing revolving loan fund administration agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Development and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 0513, an ordinance amending Ordinance 13312, authorizing the mayor to enter into an administrative services contract with Hocking Athens Perry Community Action, HAPCAP, to administer the housing revolving loan fund and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 0613, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $220,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of renewing notes issued for the purpose of paying part of the costs of acquiring and installing energy conservation improvements at the city's recreation center and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 0713, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to submit an application and enter into contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for the Safe Routes to School funds and declaring an emergency. An ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to submit an application, oops, I'm sorry. Which one are we talking about? The Small Cities Grant?
It should be, it's the 18th.
Okay, we do. I was just going to make a note. A lot of these ordinances, the last thing we say in them is declaring an emergency. That removes the standard operating procedure, which means the ordinance doesn't take effect for 30 days. So when we declare an emergency, the ordinance can be acted upon immediately. Okay, so back to ordinance 0913, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for maintenance surfacing on Route 50 near the Southwest Corporation boundary and Richland Avenue.
Did I skip one? Did you say 08, or did I just space out?
He did.
I
He
skipped.
just didn't say it.
You
Excuse
jumped from 07 to 08, 9, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought I blanked out there for a second.
He didn't say 08.
He just didn't say the number.
Okay, they actually read the title. Okay, no problem.
Okay, so
That's a small cities grant. You said something about a small cities grant, and
let me do ordinance 0913. An ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for maintenance resurfacing on Route 50 near the Southwest Corporation boundary and Richland Avenue. Then we're going to go to ordinance 01013, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, in preparation for bridge rehabilitation over Margaret Creek. Ordinance 1113, an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street from Union to State on Saturday, April 20th, 2013, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the International Street Fair. Then we move on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 1213, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit a fiscal year 2013 Community Housing Improvement Program, CHIP grant application to the Office of Community Development, Office of Community Development, Ohio Development Services Agency, ODSA, and designating Hocking, Athens, Perry County Community Action as the Community Housing Improvement Program grant contract administrator and declaring an emergency. Member Fall, I'm sorry.
Thank you, President Zann. Do we need to suspend on this?
Actually, I'm not sure. I don't think so, though.
Okay, maybe.
We have the other, we still have to do a public hearing.
Right,
On some of
okay.
this,
So I'm going to let the mayor describe this further because he's been more involved with the communication with HAPCAP about this particular grant. So it has been successful every other year from our records to do rehab, especially for low-income housing.
This is the Community Housing Improvement Program, which is where the CHIP comes from. This is essentially to help low and moderate income housing. There's a whole series of spectrum of strategies to do this. The ones that work most appropriately within our city, of course, are the home ownership rehabilitation, or rather rehab and repair. These are two different slots. They run about, I think, a total of about $125,000. You can apply for that. We have in the past. The last cycle, we also did some rental rehab, mostly for Metropolitan Housing. It's kind of a hard sell because many times really what you have to do is it's a 50% match with the landlord has to pay for 50%, which would be a bargain, except you'd really have to tie yourself into low and moderate income housing rates, rental rates. So that we did that last year for Metropolitan Housing, which has a series of rental stock. We do some down payment assistance, not a lot of it. Probably, I think we're talking about maybe doing 2 of them. Again, we'll have a public hearing to get more input on this. Some of the other work we've done, of course, is with Habitat for Humanity. We put some money, worked with them for some money in a match. They became part of the match for that house that's going up on Alexander. So it's a series. It takes about almost 2 years, 18 months about to run this course. The conditions of actually getting it renewed depends on how well we fare in each round of funding. So we try keeping ourselves within attainable reaches of what we can do. I think in the past, many mayors ago, they tried doing everything, and as a result, they didn't accomplish as much as they could and didn't get the grant for several years, like 9 or 10 years. So. Anything else? Again, it's pretty much run. We have HAPCAP administer it. They've been doing it in the past. They're pretty good at what they do. They do this for the county as well, surrounding other counties, because they cover a large area. So, does that answer your questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Other council members?
You mentioned down payment assistance,
Yes.
and that would be low and moderate income.
Yes. The difficulty with that is, of course, is that if you're in the low and moderate income range, and the house prices being high, there's a disconnect between that and what you can get as a mortgage. They have a limited amount of what they can put forward, and of course you go to a bank and they said, well, there's a gap in between, and that's why it hasn't been I think we maybe put one or two in the mix every cycle, and usually we can find one, but that's over a year and a half to do that, and it's difficult. So, and again, other cities and other places would not have the same problem.
It's because of our high cost of,
Housing,
yes.
yes.
Mary, in the beginning, did you mention something about a public hearing?
I believe we have to schedule at least two. I know one at least. We're going to have one, yes.
Where more information will be.
Yes, Greg Andrew, HapCat will be there. Actually, the idea is to receive information, but if you want to get more information to actually talk about it, we can get some out there.
Thank you.
So it's happening here, the public hearing?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Moving on, ordinance 1313, an ordinance authorizing the payment of a prior year expense and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Nisler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we consider this ordinance under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason being that this is a prior year expense and the payment is due to the company that provided the services.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The rules have been suspended. Member Nisler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 1313.
Second.
And the particulars of this ordinance is just one payment, and it is to be made from our water fund administration account number 740. And this is to be paid to Chemron Environmental Services, Inc. And as explained last week in our committee meeting, this covers for payment of additional soil that was needed to fill in some trenches on a property we own on North Columbus Road. At the time that they were excavating and removing tanks from that particular property, Chemron encountered some soils which they said, quote, were suspect according to the field tests that were conducted. And in order to be safe, they removed additional dirt, so we needed additional dirt purchase to fill those in. The amount of that is $18,000.
Okay, we have a motion to accept ordinance 1313. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 1413, an ordinance amending the 2013 appropriation ordinance, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is to increase appropriations to Fund 865. 865 is internal services, which is for vehicle maintenance, in-house vehicle maintenance, and IT, computer repair. And the funding is going to come from a number of different sources. To break it down, it would be $25,795 from the general fund, $20,300 from the street fund, $1,750 from the recreation fund, $3,600 from the community center, and $13,400 from the water fund and $500 from the garbage fund to cover that appropriation.
Okay, we don't need to suspend this at this time.
Mr. Mayor?
I was told it's not necessary.
Okay.
I thought it was, but no.
Moving on to a resolution for second reading, Resolution 0113, a resolution indicating the services the City of Athens will provide for the proposed annexation of approximately 2 acres located at 2 Ridgeview, as requested by the annexation petitioner, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, President Sands. I would move that this be reviewed under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason being that the petitioner will be going in front of the county commissioners before we could do a third reading for release of the particular piece of property from the county.
We have a resolution that we suspend the rules? Okay. We have a motion for to accept the ordinance. Okay. So,
To
although-
suspend.
This is- Okay, so we haven't done this.
We haven't suspended.
No, we haven't suspended.
So we have a motion to suspend the rules. All those in favor of suspending the rules on Resolution 0113 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The rules have been suspended. And Member Fuld.
I move that we accept the resolution on third reading to pass the resolution.
Second.
This particular resolution is to identify the services that the city will give. This is one of the several steps on the annexation process. It indicates the services that the city will provide to this particular piece of property when it is annexed into the city. And that has already been signed off on by all city departments.
Now, we have a motion for third reading to accept the ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The resolution is adopted. Now we have a one reading resolution, R 0213, a resolution supporting the tentative award of a contract for construction of the wastewater treatment plant, project number 266. Member Butler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to adopt this one reading resolution.
Second.
Specifically, this particular award for the contract would allow the beginning of this project to the wastewater treatment plant, and it's contingent upon the City of Athens receiving funding from the Ohio Water Development Authority, OWDA, as well as the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund. The particular contractor that was the low bidder was Building Crafts, Inc., and as noted in an email from engineer Jessica Dean, this company in 2011 completed a $40 million three-year project for the city, which I don't know if I can pronunciate correctly here, but Murfreesboro in Tennessee. Is that Murfreesboro?
Yeah, Murfreesboro.
Okay, but there's no Y in there. Murfreesboro, Tennessee, for water treatment plant improvements. Reports from the water plant's assistant manager and engineer were excellent, and they did not encounter any issues with the contractor during construction and have had no issues at the plant. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for adoption of our one reading resolution. All those in favor of the ordinance, of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The resolution is adopted. Announcements. Next week, we will have committee meetings. And do any council members know of committees that need to meet? Planning and Development? Finance?
Just handling committee.
I will follow up with Public Works Director Stone and the City Service Safety Director to see if there's anything pressing. I'm not sure. Mayor, do you know if we have anything in?
I'm not sure. I
City
know we're
Services
talking about
Safety.
trying to do an application for a police grant, I think.
Correct. Looking at a cruiser. Is that?
Yes, cruiser.
So that will likely be, and I know Member Patterson expressed interest in leading that charge.
Okay, I think there are some other ones, but I forget what they are offhand, so we'll have things to get to. Also, we need to appropriate money for the Perfection lighting. It fell through the cracks. I did not put it back in the appropriation. It did not have a project number, so it didn't stay in the book, so we have to re-up the money on that. Okay? That's for the lighting, phase 2 of Perfection, just so you know. Those are two things I can think of right off the top. I'm sure there will be others, though.
Again, committee meetings next Monday, 7 o'clock, same place. Right now, we have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items that were not covered on the agenda already. Anybody have issues they'd like to talk about? Hearing none, we will call the meeting adjourned.